In the race to assassinate Donald Trump, it looks like things are getting competitive because there appears to be 5 teams competing for the headshot. Have you heard about this story? Matt Gaetz casually dropped it into an interview the other day that there are 5 teams that they know of that are all competing to assassinate Donald Trump.
So, just right off the bat, if Donald Trump's going to be assassinated, who do we reckon is the most likely culprit?
Well, am I allowed to say the CIA? I mean, could we say that?
It could be the FBI.
I might have to be a little bit careful with how I frame some of this stuff.
If Dan doesn't come to work next week, you know what happened.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let me take you to the comments that he made because they're quite remarkable. Can we play the radio clip that he gave, please?
I am starting to get the impression that we do not have enough force protection of supporting President Trump that we ought to have given the threat environment. I met recently with a senior official at the Department of Homeland Security who said that there are at least 5 known assassination teams in the United States right now, at least 3 of which are foreign, that are out to kill Trump. And with that type of activity, I don't think we should be allowing people to set up for an extended period of time and wait to take their shot outside of his Gulf properties or his other properties. I'm also deeply concerned that the second attempted assassin was actually encountered at the border upon his return to the country from Ukraine. And the Customs and Border Patrol thought his story was so suspicious that he was recruiting freedom fighters all over the world to go fight in Ukraine. And when they asked him how he was financing this, he said, "Oh, well, my wife is paying for it." And that seemed odd. And so the CBP officials referred Ryan Rouse to the Department of Homeland Security's investigations unit to determine what was going on. And they declined to even proceed with an investigation. They just stopped and let the guy in the country. And we've got a lot of questions about that.
Okay, hold on. I got a lot of... I never heard any of that second part or that first part. What were you saying about these 5 assassination teams?
Well, we are aware of at least 5 teams in country that are geared toward killing Trump. And I think, 3 of them that we know are foreign in nature. 2 of them we know are domestic in nature. And that calls for a force protection that we do not have around the former president right now.
Okay, who were you talking to that talked about this?
A senior Department of Homeland Security official met with me, said they were aware of this and were concerned that the Secret Service was not providing sufficient support.
Was this like a hearing, or was this like in your office?
This was in my office.
Okay. Now listen, Congressman, I'm just a guy here. I don't know things. Why are these people? What do we do? Why are we just having assassination teams walking around?
Well, one reason is because when they entered the country, there was insufficient scrutiny to stop them from doing so. Right? I mean, the 3 of these teams are foreign-inspired, from my understanding. Iranians, Ukraine, Pakistan.
So there's a lot to unpack there, but that's pretty extraordinary. A senior official from Homeland Security has been warning Trump allies that there are 5 teams operating that they know of in the United States with the express purpose of killing President Trump.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I did find interesting was the guy who was at Trump's golf course in Florida.
Yes.
Who the most recent attempt, other than the bomb one, which disputes about the legitimacy of that or not. I haven't really looked into it recently. But that guy, I thought he was an American citizen, wasn't he? So why is he coming across the southern border at all? That seems unusual.
Oh, my understanding is that he went off to fight in Ukraine because he's one of these people who actually really believes the news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen lots of pictures of him in Ukrainian flag regalia and all that stuff.
They didn't allow him to join the ranks.
That's right. They said he was a bit crazy.
Yes, it was something about that. I mean,
Ryan Ruth guy.
I was going to mention this a bit later, but we talk about Ryan Ruth now. I mean, so apparently he was inspired to go and fight for Ukraine, and he was so erratic and crazy that his own colleagues reported him to the Customs and Border Protection and also to the FBI. And apparently they heard nothing back from either organisation. They weren't interested in the strange behaviour of this man.
Looking at the guy, I can believe it, to be honest.
Well, and apparently he was trying to recruit Syrian refugees to go and fight in Ukraine. So, yeah.
He also appeared in Romania in a Newsweek network.
Yeah,
saying
that's right,
that, he is trying to fight. And it has been disputed because they're saying that they're not allowing several people to fight.
Well, the Ukrainian government has tried to distance itself quite extensively, because if it's found to have an association with someone who tried to assassinate Trump, well, that sort of upsets the nice conveyor belt of money and weapons that's going to Ukraine constantly from the Western world.
So, you going to say something?
Yeah. Are we talking about Ryan Ruth now and then talking to?
Well, yeah, if you've got a point about Ruth, yeah.
No, I mean, it's okay. Just not about Ruth. I wanted to say something about the Iranian group.
Yes. So, I mean, we're talking about that. So he highlights 5 groups, 2 of which are domestic. Don't know who they are. I mean, presumably the CIA and FBI. I'm not entirely sure. But 2 domestic groups that they're aware of. And the 3 foreign ones he mentioned was, what was it? It was Iranians, Ukrainians, and Pakistan. Now, the Iranians, I can sort of believe, are their own thing. Any Ukrainian team is going to be a Western deep state cutout, isn't it? Since all of their operations are basically Western deep state.
Well, it's interesting how enmeshed a lot of Western leaders are with a lot of the financial aspects to the Ukrainian war. I think that's what I can say. But
they've been using it for money laundering.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's another way of putting it, yeah.
Yes. So
just to get it out of the way, because I think it's the least controversial one, the Iranian one. If my memory doesn't completely fail me, I think that when there was the hit to Ahmadinejad, not Ahmadinejad, the
general
Soleimani.
Yes, Soleimani.
Yeah. I think that there were some people that were who were his supporters who were very adamant about being after Trump.
Yes.
And going after Trump. So I think that's pretty out in the open.
Yeah, I mean,
unless my memory.
So actually, the one that I'm least bothered about is the Iranian ones, because fair enough. I mean, Trump did blow up one of their generals, and also Trump maintained a pretty hard line on Iranian sanctions. Whereas as soon as Biden came into office, he basically, took all of the pressure off Iran. They've still officially got sanctions, but I don't believe they're being enforced. So I can well understand why Iran wants to see Kamalov and not Trump win the election. So I don't particularly have a problem with the Iranians going after him, but the Ukrainians.
I have a problem in that I don't want them to succeed.
I don't want them to succeed, but I kind of see it at least somewhat legitimate that they're kind of doing that, because as soon as he gets into office, he's going to start blowing up their generals again. So I mean, it's a bit argy-bargy.
They've at least got a more traditional incentive to engage in it.
But the Ukrainians, I mean, they're being run on US taxpayers' money. And they're being directed by the deep state over here. So for them to be trying to assassinate Trump it's kind of taking the piss a bit, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, the only reason there's a Ukraine is because of the West at the minute.
And then there's Pakistan, which has interesting links with organisations like the CIA. So if they're running operations, I don't know. It just sounds to me like the CIA have got 5 patsies that they can pin it on when somebody actually gets the job done, as they would see it.
And to talk about the incentives here, because you're bringing them up, and to add a little bit of context to what you're saying, some of the intelligence agencies do have a very strong incentive to make Trump a political non-entity, let's say, because he's been very vocal about in his criticism of the organisations, pointed out things that they've done that are neither moral nor technically legal, and said that they need to have their power cut back and basically clear out of lots of people that are corrupt. Look at the Hunter Biden story,
yes,
which in the run-up to the 2020 election was covered up under the pressure of the intelligence agencies.
Something like
It was 50 people, went on the record to say that it was Russian disinformation.
And we now know that it was entirely true. So basically 50 senior intelligence personnel all barefaced lied in order to try and stop Trump getting elected.
Absolutely. And also, I looked at the same information that they looked at to verify it, and it was so obviously legitimate, my poor eyes, by the way, that there's no honest mistake here. If, a journalist based in Swindon can figure out that, and 50 intelligence agency people whose sole job is to verify this sort of thing, that's obviously malfeasance rather than incompetence.
And well, of course, I mean, Trump might well end up appointing RFK as CIA director or something similar to that.
Would be wonderful.
Yes, and but let's say that they were actually involved in the assassination of his father and uncle. You can imagine how desperate they would be to stop Trump winning and RFK being put in the head of this organization. So, I mean, there's lots of people with motives here to try and do this. I'm showing on the screen here a Zero Hedge article. I've already referred to some of it with this Ryan Roof chap here. The only other thing that I'll throw in there is that there was more in that interview where Gates was talking about this, and he also made reference to the Pakistani plot, which could be in relation to the Pakistani man arrested on July 12th, because he tried to hire a undercover FBI agent to assassinate Donald Trump.
That's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it?
Yes.
Just a little bit.
I don't know why the FBI arrested him for that. I mean, maybe because, we've already got plans in the works.
Maybe he's a CIA guy and say
yes. Yeah, something like that. I shall quickly mention at this stage of the segment that we are looking for a production administrator. There's lots of fantastic things about this job. You get to be in Swindon, and you get to work with the likes of us, and you administrate the production stuff.
Here are the responsibilities if you want to read them.
Yes.
Pause the video.
Yes.
And then resume it once you've read them, obviously.
Yes, so if you'd like to work with us, do get in touch. I quite liked this clip from, let's just play the first few seconds of this, of Trump after the, the second assassination attempt.
What are 2 things you do to stay healthy?
Well, I used to play golf a little bit. That gave me, so I don't know, but it seems to be quite a dangerous sport in retrospect.
I'll just leave it there. Yes, that amused me, his reaction to this. If you follow the Gates interview, the one that I played a little bit of earlier, a very interesting comment is made about the Secret Service potentially having a mole in it. I won't go back to the recording, but he says, I have Republican colleagues who have not ruled out a mole inside the Secret Service of providing information about points of vulnerability, such as, for example, when he's golfing and there's only a chain link fence between you and the security.
Yeah, there's a very obvious need here to ramp up his security well above even that of a normal president, because, of course, 2 attempts in very short space of time, news of more, it's pretty obvious that he's a high priority target for lots of assassins.
Well, I remember watching something, I think it was on the Secret Barristers channel or something like that, where he was speaking to a guy who had a nice property, I think it was in Scotland or something, and there was going to be a World Leaders event nearby, and it was fairly remote, but there was still a couple of houses around there, and they went to each of these houses and offered the people there £40,000 to move out for a week, just because they could have a better security perimeter.
I'd like to live there. That sounds great.
Yeah, I'd imagine these houses are probably quite expensive. And he said that, and the guy that he was speaking to didn't actually take the £40,000. He decided to stay in his house for the week. Yeah.
What?
And his wife opened an upstairs window at one point, and within 30 seconds there was a sniper team at the door, banging on the door, wanting to know why the window was open. So this is the level of security that Biden gets. But with Trump, there's clearly a gap.
And with Trump's golf assassination attempt, a lot of people say that it was a spontaneously organized event.
Right.
That's what makes a lot of people particularly worried that there may have been information from the inside.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it was spontaneous because he had all of the gear ready to go, didn't he? And he was waiting in a specific spot for a specific time.
No, I don't mean that he spontaneously manifested in a golf course. Just saying that in his schedule, that he decided last minute.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So
I'm saying that
the assassin wasn't spontaneous. It was Trump that was spontaneous. Okay.
Yeah. And how would he know to go there? So yeah, I mean, I'll just read on more of this. So he said he's got colleagues who have not ruled out a mole inside the Secret Service, and Gates says, I've not seen evidence of that myself, but my very, very smart colleagues have looked at the anomalies in the fact pattern here and are seeing something. He says more likely there was such a disdain for Trump and such a desire to diminish him with these agencies, giving him less protection, and having him surrounded by not having him surrounded by a bunch of strong men that appear authoritative in nature, that there is a type of virtuing signalling to drain protective resources away, and it's tolerated because in their heart of hearts they don't much like Trump.
That sounds about right.
I mean, that sounds entirely reasonable, but then I wouldn't rule out the mole either, to be honest. Sadly, now Trump is having to. We can play this without. We don't need sound for it.
It's like the Pope. Now. He's got his own little box.
Yeah, but he has to give his talks now behind bulletproof glass, which I have mixed feelings about because obviously it's not quite as great for the people attending because you get a sheen reflecting off this glass and it's not quite as personal. But then on the other hand, I'm very pleased because there are 5 teams trying to assassinate.
I think they would rather he be alive than getting a slightly better view in the rally.
Yeah,
so his supporters, because in the first assassination attempt 2 people died.
Well, yes, it keeps the supporters safer as well.
Because if there's another one and it misses again, someone else.
2 people died, including the shooter. So I don't think he was necessarily a supporter.
Yeah, I'm talking about James Copenhagen.
I mean, but several other people were quite seriously wounded as well.
True,
so there's that. I mean, bulletproof glass for political events. I think it was Obama that was the first one to do it. I remember hearing about it like 15 years ago that they were putting Obama behind bulletproof glass. My reaction at the time was, well, yes, I appreciate he's black, but he's not going to shoot anyone, surely. but then it kind of went away for a while. Biden clearly doesn't need any bulletproof glass when he goes anywhere because nobody turns up to his events anyway.
Well, time's going to do what an assassin would do anyway. And
yes.
Give it about 5 minutes.
Yeah, it would have to be a very fast bullet to beat old Father Time there. Camel Laugh doesn't do events at all. And Trump, of course, ditched it, but has been forced to have it back again. Gates, even though he sort of just dropped it into that interview, having given that interview, he then decided that he was really going to run with it, and so he repeated this on other shows. He mentioned it again on his Twitter feed, as we saw here. He even mentioned it on his website. He wrote an article on his website saying that basically there are 5 teams, Ukrainians, Pakistanis, and Iranians, as well as 2 domestic teams that are hunting for Trump, which is a little bit worrying. After this came out, if you notice the date on this stuff, a couple of days later, because he really started to push this, a couple of days later, I found that if you put Matt Gaetz into a search engine and look at the news tab, you get dozens and dozens of variations of this article, which popped up following this. So all of a sudden, loads of media organisations have dug out this story, which dates back to 2017. So what's that? 7 years ago. Apparently 7 years ago, Mr. Gates attended a party which included wild, drug, and sex-fueled.
I just Googled it, and all the articles are just...
Yeah, and they all appeared 2 days ago, 2 days after he started making a fuss about this.
It's almost like he's getting at something. When the media runs a smear job all at the same time, normally there's a common point of origin, and which groups have that level of reach that all media outlets, left or right, all run the same story at the same time. It might potentially be the same organisation that did in wartime, which would be
yes.
the intelligence agencies.
Well, and the way that I found this, of course, is you know, I didn't know about this story because it doesn't have any cut through. Because I mean, and the interesting thing is when you read down to the bottom of this article, is it will say something along the lines of the DOJ looked at the allegations and decided not to pursue them. Right, now the Department of Justice under Biden, and who's that awful guy who runs it? I forget now, but that wormy guy who runs it, they will go after a Republican for basically anything.
Mm-hmm.
So if even Biden's Department of Justice is not touching this, then whatever the allegation, whatever the problem is here, clearly it doesn't stand up to much.
Well, the thing is that if they did pursue that and he was found innocent, then they can't run with the story. But if they don't investigate,
yes, good point.
It's still able to stick a little bit, isn't it?
Yes, quite. Interestingly, Jack Posobiec, after hearing this, because I mean he's got a background in military. I think he was naval intelligence or something, wasn't he, Posobiec? But he's been gathering information on this, and he's saying that, you know, this story is entirely legit, and he's gathering a lot of information on it himself. So it's a new story. So I would imagine that in the next week or so, Posobiec or others will be publishing more details on this. But you know, I just think it's extraordinary that there were 5 teams hunting Trump, 3 of them run by foreign governments, one of which is supposed to be an ally of the United States. And, you know, you're learning about this for the first time on the Lotus Eaters and not the mainstream media. Yes, which is rather extraordinary. Now, why might you need 5 assassination teams? Well, this is the polling as it stands at the moment. I've used Nate Silver because apparently a lot of people think that he's good at this sort of stuff. I don't really have an opinion on that, but fine. Okay, let's say he is. It's looking like a Trump solid win, maybe even landslide territory.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.